700 wives, 300 girlfriends, 1,000 women. And the man who had all of them still wrote a book about how miserable he was. This is a story of the wisest man who ever lived and the dumb decisions he ever made. But to first understand how someone even gets to 1,000 women, you have to understand who this man was before all of that. So, there was this guy. His name was Solomon. And before everything went sideways, this man was literally the blueprint for having it all together. His dad was King David. And if you don't know who David is, imagine the most legendary, most celebrated, most talked about king in history. That was his dad. So Solomon already had some big shoes to fill just by showing up. When David died and Solomon took the throne, God showed up personally in a dream and said,
"Ask me for anything, anything at all."
if God showed up in your dream tonight and said that, what would you ask for? Money? Fame? A metabolism that actually works? Solomon, he simply just asked for wisdom to lead his people well. God, genuinely impressed, said essentially,
Bro, that's the right answer. Wisdom you want, wisdom you get. And since you didn't ask for the other stuff, I'm throwing that in too.
the wealth, the power, the fame, all of it, delivered. Let me give you the actual numbers because they are genuinely unhinged. 25 tons of gold every single year. Every year. His throne made of pure ivory covered in gold. Lion statues on every step. The Bible says there was nothing like it in any kingdom on earth. 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horses. That's not transportation, that's a flex. He spent 7 years building God's temple in Jerusalem. Gold everywhere, cedar wood from Lebanon, craftsmen from multiple countries, one of the most magnificent structures the ancient world had ever seen. Then spent 13 years building his own palace, because apparently the temple wasn't enough. The Queen of Sheba, who was like super duper wealthy herself, she traveled hundreds of miles just to see if the rumors were true. She saw everything, and even to quote the Bible, it says, there was no more spirit in her. She nearly blacked out. She decided to give him 9,000 pounds of gold as a gift and said the rumors didn't even come close. Oh yeah, and somewhere in between all of this, Solomon decided to write 3,000 proverbs and 1,000 songs while running a kingdom. My boy definitely needed a nap. Okay, so here's where things start to go sideways. God had 3 very specific rules for the kings of Israel. Rule number 1, don't stockpile too many horses. Rule number 2, don't accumulate too much gold. And finally, rule number 3, do not multiply wives. Solomon decided to break all 3. Horses, he had 12,000 of them, broken. Gold, 25 tons a year, broken. But the wives, oh yes, the wives. So Solomon started making political marriages, which was very normal for kings. You marry a foreign princess, seal a peace deal, everybody wins. Smart, strategic, totally reasonable. Except Solomon, he didn't stop. He just kept going. I mean, really didn't stop. By the time somebody actually counted, 700 wives, 300 concubines, 1,000 women. I mean, the birthday cards alone would be a full-time job. You would need a whole entire department just for anniversaries. Imagine the dinner seating chart. All right, never mind. Let's keep going. Real quick, let's do the math. 1,000 women, 40-year reign. That's 25 new relationships per year, 2 per month, 1 every 2 weeks, for 40 years. This is all while running a kingdom, building temples, writing proverbs, receiving foreign leaders and VIPs. The scheduling alone would have had me destroyed personally. Now, God didn't actually say, don't get married. The warning was specifically about foreign wives from nations that worshipped other gods, because God knew exactly what would happen. He literally told Solomon, they will turn your heart. Solomon said, I appreciate the concern, but I think I got this. Solomon definitely didn't have this. And here's how we know. Because it didn't happen overnight. There were no single moment where Solomon woke up and said, forget God, I'm going full pagan today. It was slow, gradual, like a leak in the roof that nobody notices until the ceiling caves in. It started with tolerance. His wives brought their gods with them, their rituals, their altars, their practices. Solomon loved these women, so he allowed it. Didn't participate, just didn't stop it. Compromise number 1, tolerance. Then came accommodation. He started building worship sites for his wives on the Mount of Olives. Literally on the hill overlooking the temple he spent 7 years building for God. the most magnificent temple ever created, and Solomon is building competing worship sites right across the street. Compromise number 2, participation by proxy. And then, in his old age, his heart turned completely. He wasn't just allowing it anymore, he was in it himself, worshiping foreign gods, personally. The wisest man alive, the man God spoke to twice, the man who built God's temple, bowing down to idols. And then the consequences started coming. Enemies rose up on every single side, from the south, from the north, and then finally, one of his own officials turned against him. Someone he personally trusted and promoted, now plotting to take the throne. Solomon found out and tried to have him killed, his own guy. The man escaped and waited for Solomon to die. Solomon then spent his final years not in peace, but in constant turmoil. Fires from every direction, betrayal from inside his own house. He started his reign with the most powerful queen in the world nearly fainting from how impressive he was. He then ended it surrounded by enemies watching his kingdom crack from the inside. And the most devastating part, he never repented. No record of turning back, no dramatic comeback. The Bible just says Solomon reigned for 40 years and then he died. And the second his son took the throne, the kingdom split in two and never came back together. One man's slow drift destroyed an entire nation for generations. Okay, stop for a second. Think about where Solomon started. Young king, God shows up in a dream, ask me for anything. Solomon asks for wisdom. God gives him absolutely everything. That's conversation number 1. Solomon builds the most magnificent temple the world had ever seen. God shows up again, stay faithful, and your kingdom lasts forever. That's conversation number 2. And then silence for decades. God's watching the whole thing unfold like a parent watching their kid make a terrible decision in slow motion. And then, after all of that, God shows up one final time. No wealth, no promises, no blessing, just a verdict.
Since you have done this and have not kept my covenant, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you.
No second chances. No let's talk about this. No strongly worded letter. Just, it's over. And Solomon, he doesn't even say a word. The wisest man who ever lived, and he had absolutely nothing left to say. God gives one small mercy, though, out of respect for Solomon's father. He lets Solomon finish his reign. But the moment Solomon dies, the kingdom splits in two forever. Everything Solomon built, everything his father built, gone because of a drift that started with one compromise nobody even noticed. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Solomon wrote a book called Ecclesiastes. Yes, that's a real word. No, I will not be repeating it. This book is basically Solomon's journal from the other side of all of his mistakes. Picture the scene, the wisest man alive, sitting in his palace, 1,000 women somewhere in the building, more gold than he could ever spend. And he picks up a pen and writes, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Not blessed and grateful, not living my best life. Meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Construction projects, built them all. Meaningless. Gardens, parks, vineyards, had them all. Meaningless. Silver, gold, singers, musicians, check, 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 meaningless. And then the delights of a man's heart. 1,000 women later, still meaningless. The man with literally everything wrote a whole book about how none of it worked. He had the right answer at the very beginning. Somewhere along the line, he forgot the question. So here's what this story is actually about. And it's not Solomon. Well, it is Solomon, but it's also about every single one of us. Solomon didn't fall because he was stupid. The man had more wisdom than any human being who ever lived. He could have written a 3,000-page manual on how not to mess your life up. He literally did. It's called Proverbs. And yet, he still managed to ignore every single word of it. He fell because he was smart enough to justify every single decision along the way. One more marriage, one more shrine, one more compromise, just this once. Each one seemed reasonable, logical, smart diplomacy from the smartest man alive. But zoom out, and it's a slow motion disaster 40 years in the making. That's not just Solomon's story, that's everybody's story. The thing that takes you down rarely shows up looking dangerous. It shows up looking reasonable, one small compromise at a time. Wisdom without obedience is just clever rebellion, and Solomon proved that better than anyone. The book of Ecclesiastes ends with only one thing that survived all of it. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Not 1,000 women, not 25 tons of gold, not 3,000 proverbs that apparently he forgot to read himself. Just that. The man with everything figured out that everything isn't the answer, and he wrote it down so he wouldn't have to learn it the same way he did. If this story meant something to you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And if you want to carry out your faith with you every day, please check out my wife's Etsy store. It's down in the description. You know, the place that you never look. Please just look this time. And if you made it this far, you're clearly somebody who actually wants to understand this stuff. So subscribe so you never miss a story, and I'll see you guys next week.